The unexpected death of Blueberry CEO Todd Cochrane has shaken the podcast community. Every week since 2015, I would go searching for a new episode of the New Media Show, the long-standing show that discusses all things media and podcast. When it was on Saturdays, I would cook lunch and listen to it live. And if it ran during the week, I would listen to it live if I could, or maybe later that night. Todd said that if you listened to the show long enough, you could get a PhD in podcasting. I started this podcast in 2016 the same way many do, by myself, as a creator, staff of one, which became a staff of 2 by episode 4, a staff of 3 by episode 50, and then there were 4 of us by episode 256. It was largely the advice that came from Todd Cochrane and co-host Rob Greenlee who pointed this show and later the Sound Off Podcast Network into the space that it is today. One of the things I learned from them is that a good podcast has a way of building trust. And over the years, I came to believe a lot of the things that Todd advocated for were good. Good for creators, good for podcasting, and good for the audience. Since 2019, Todd has made 3 appearances on the Sound Off podcast. He was always willing to talk to other creators in our network, too, about podcasting. He even let some of them try out some of the innovations and tools that they were working on at Blueberry. He loved helping out new creators and always wanted to find a way to make life easier for them when it came to his products and also attending conferences. My last conversation with him was over a few pints in London at the podcast show, where we talked about the same thing we did every year, the future of podcasting. I spent the day after Todd passed away listening back to the audio we had recorded together. I made various notes and highlights on the transcripts, and then I clipped them by hand, so you can listen to Todd share his thoughts with you one more time. My heartfelt condolences to Todd's family, his New Media Show co-host Rob Greenlee, Mackenzie and Mike, and the team at Blueberry Podcasting, and to everyone grieving the loss of the 2015 Podcast Hall of Fame inductee, Todd Cochrane. He will be missed.
In 2004, I had gotten hurt pretty bad, recreation injury in a swimming pool in Bahrain. And so I was laid up in the hospital 13 days with a back injury. I couldn't fly anymore. As I was in convalescent leave, I was looking for a job, really. And I heard about this contract overseer, essentially. At the time, I was spending a lot of time on the internet. And lo and behold, I ran into Adam Curry and Dave Weiner's Daily Source Code. About 3 or 4 episodes in from them, I'm like, man, I could do this. Ran over to Walmart, was literally across the highway from where I was at, and bought a LabTech microphone and recorded the first 4 or 5 episodes. We were hand jamming feeds. From there, it really turned into, trying to stay ahead of the bandwidth game and trying to keep the show online. The media, because I'd blown through 500 gigs of data, a month and a half later, and said, hey, I'm a podcaster. And when Wiley Publishing came calling in November, said, hey, we want you to write a book on podcasting. I signed a contract, and by mid-January, I was mid-process in writing the first book on podcasting. This is pre-iTunes. The book came out in June of 2005, and GoDaddy called and said, hey, we want to sponsor your show. And from there, it's pretty much history. How the space is shaped out, we're definitely the masters of folks owning their own .coms and powering their sites with PowerPress. And that's what I think the majority of our customers, probably 90% of our customers, use our service through their own websites, and they use our plugin. They publish through us, get stats through us. We have a percentage of customers obviously use our on-site publisher at blueberry.com. So really our delta is, and what we've always been, and what the company's mantra has always been about from really day one, was to allow content creators to build their sites on their .com, controlling their IPs, controlling their feed, building their brand, and us providing tools and services and frankly, just getting out of the way. We're podcasters first, so we understand the value in building our brands on our websites versus, going to a vertical, being locked into a website. So having your own .com and having your own brand is more valuable than ever. I've always been poo-pooed saying, oh, you don't have to have your own website. And the rooster comes back to roost in that you do. And if you don't, you better hope all your neighbors on the site that you're on are good neighbors. And if they're not, you're going to be impacted. These radio groups are starting to come around and starting to see the value of, number one, creating new independent content, letting their staff budget out and do unique shows, and also breaking out this content that is very valuable to the local community because, radio is local.
iHeart is number one.
In their own minds. Let's quantify number one. Are they number one in downloads? Are they number one in audience size? Are they number one in the number of podcasts? They at times be on the top of some charts, being number one for having the most number of downloads for their network. But again, that's only a small segment. Those are the publicly available charts of the content being created out there. But if you say it long enough, it's true. But they are far, far, far away from being number one in almost all categories. Maybe one, maybe number of total downloads for their network. Maybe they can use that claim to fame, but I think that's where it's limited to.
iHeart conducts the first podcast awards.
That's funny because I conducted the first podcast awards in 2005. So, no. Free podcast hosts have come and gone. The most recent one that was saved as they were on their last legs of their financing was, of course, Anchor. Spotify bought them. So I think they're pretty safe. What we find is those that use free podcast hosts generally are not as serious. They're maybe experimenting, and there's plenty of room for people that are looking to experiment and see if podcasting's for them. We often find those shows will graduate into paid services. Just like any business, there has to be some sort of true financial model in order to keep the lights on, keep the employees paid. Free is a difficult model. It's not impossible. And we're starting to see more folks come in and try the free model. We'll see what happens.
Tech company launches the Netflix of podcasting.
We'll see how long they survive. I think content creators largely are the hobbyists. There's another 20% out there that want to make some money. And then there's 15% that are truly hardcore business. Those shows are always looking for opportunities. And if they are given an opportunity to come on one of these networks that has a paid model, I always tell them, hey, take the check. Always retain rights to your show. Have an exit strategy if that company doesn't survive. I think it's a very uphill battle for anyone that is trying to create a $6.95 or $11.95 model per month to get access to a select number of shows that maybe they have other alternative options somewhere else. The discoverability issue is truly oftentimes the failure of a podcast host to do the things that they need to be discovered. If you are online, if you are living in the world of the web, you have to have the ability for the Googles of the world to index your content to be able to be found. And if you going back to what I said earlier, if you don't have your own .com, you don't have the ability to write extensive show notes, to have some context for Google to figure out who you are. Your number one, discoverability is going to really suck from just someone searching for a topic about your show. They're going to find someone else's show. I think still word of mouth, being able to be found online, writing concise titles to your episodes, potentially having indexing of the transcripts of shows so that it even raises the availability of being found even higher. So I think it really is about content creators focusing on the metadata, and at the same time, telling your audience to share your show with their friends and family and people that you know, and that 7 degrees of separation to definitely get the word out. I don't think there's a threat to RSS. The only true threat there is, and it really isn't a threat, it's podcasters who have decided to go behind a paywall, but those shows are still being pulled in probably by a private, undisclosed RSS feed somewhere. So the underlying technology, I think, is still there. So I think the risk and the thing I've been talking about is let's make sure that we remain gatekeeper free. And that's just being vigilant and talking and being publicly vocal about podcasting and how it's an open medium and how to remain an open medium. I've always said I don't care where people consume the content as long as they consume it. They want to consume on YouTube, great. They want to consume on Facebook, great. I do a live stream with my show, and it's, the live stream is up on YouTube. I get a handful of post views. If you're just doing audio, it's not super compelling on YouTube. But again, I don't care where people listen. YouTube's a strange animal. And if you've been successful on YouTube before, you probably have a higher probability of being found as a podcaster on YouTube as well. But I guess we'll just see. We'll see what happens. Well, it's a situation where I believe very, very strongly, and Blueberry has adopted GDPR globally, or CCPA compliant. We believe very strongly in listener privacy. We don't want listeners remarketed to. They've already opted in all over the place. Why add podcasting to that piece? The difference is when I go to Amazon or if I go to Google, I opt into their terms of service. I say, yes, I'm agreeing to buy stuff on your platform. In exchange, you're going to track what I search for and look for, and you're going to present ads to me. That's part of the deal we do, and we sign up for. We may not know that in the 800 pages of print, but that's essentially what we've assigned for. We've agreed to those terms of services. When a podcast listener subscribes or follows a show, there's no such transaction that says, hey, we're going to track you and we're going to and use that information to market to you. It's about the data. What are they going to do with that data? How are they going to market that data? What are the data that's being collected? What are they going to do with it? So as a podcaster, like you said, you have to weigh the decision. Is the value I'm giving these platforms about my listeners, is it worth the exchange? And am I okay with potentially my listeners being, now I'm saying this is going to happen, I'm just using an example. Is it worth the exchange of my listeners potentially being remarketed to? We have to remember, as a podcasting space, that 90% of the space is made up of independent content creators that are at their kitchen table, in their garage, at their friend's house, in a closet, in their spare office, creating content. And they are the ones that make up the core of this community. They don't have commercial support. They don't have producers. They don't have a team. Those are the ones that we want to help bridge. And Tom Webster wrote a great article about this in Sounds Profitable a couple of weeks ago about programmatic advertising being the bridge. I've always said that small content creators just need something, whether it be email from their listeners giving them support, saying thank you for the content, to a little bit of money coming in to show value for their time, and you bridge them to the point where they can afford to hire
someone to help with the producer show, someone to edit, someone to do social. I've been lucky enough that I've recruited people within my audience to do some of those jobs. Blueberry attracts content creators that are in this for the long haul, businesses. Our persona of listeners is really people that are truly focused on building a long, sustainable show. The shows that started at Blueberry are at Blueberry a long, long time. We still have a lot of failures out of the gate, just like everyone else does. But those that get started and go stay with us a long, long time. Our churn rate is very, very low. There's a lot of choices out there. There's a lot of tools, and people are spending a lot of money on those tools. I kind of chuckle, 10 years ago, maybe a little more, the biggest complaint we had was the cost of hosting. Oh my God, you're $12 or $20 a month. Well, now we're not even the majority of expenses for most podcasters. We're now the least amount of expense. If you're using the script, if you're using any AI tools, if you're, all of a sudden you got $100 worth of additional charges you're hosting, which has stayed the same for literally the last 15 years, is the minor expense. In the end, though, we know that podcasters quit because it's too expensive, because the cumulative total of all the tools they're using, $100, $150 a month. And if you're doing this as a hobby, and you have a partner that is wondering, where this expense is. So again, trying to fill holes with stuff that we don't have so that folks can keep the cost down, and also just, help in the overall production of people's podcasts to have better output. So, by its essence, producing video, and I've been producing video on YouTube for years. So I'm just stating here, but you basically now are basically selling your audience to be remarketed to. So if they listen to your episode, they're going to know that they particularly like something about podcasting. So they're going to remarket podcast tools, services, features, and make money off your audience, and you'll get zero. And not only that, same thing with Spotify with video, is they have said, okay, if you put video up there, we're going to play that versus your audio file. So audio has been on pass-through. So you're getting this metric data for advertisers back through pass-through on Spotify. Now, if you put video up there, that sits on top of the audio, and they get video first, which again, Spotify then can monetize against and or resell to your audience. So I think people just need to realize this is what you're giving up. And at the same time, remember that there's a whole new ecosystem of advancement in podcasting tools that is, part of, I think we're year 3 on this podcasting 2.0 journey of introducing new features that are not being carried by Apple or YouTube or by Spotify. Podcasting 2.0 is the primary reason transcripts happened. And that's something Apple did adopt. So there are other options, and RSS is still open, so that when you say something you shouldn't, your episode gets axed by either Spotify or by YouTube, or worse yet, your channel gets taken down. You still have the ability to podcast with open RSS. There's a whole list of great tools out there. And here's the thing I think people need to understand about the podcasting 2.0 piece that's often forgot. If you participate in the value for value ecosystem, everyone gets a piece of the pie. The app developer does, the index does, podcaster does, your co-host, you can set up, and some splits happen automatically through fees. So those shows, those apps are actually earning money when you are using the app and providing value for value by streaming sats. And there's some challenges right now with sats and the way things are working with wallets. And I think within the next 6 months, we're going to have it completely on fiat. So basically someone comes in and basically says for $20, divvy this out at so much a minute, and those will happen. And people will not know that there's a link to crypto that's basically getting from your cash wallet with, US dollars or whatever it may be to the podcaster. Then the podcaster can get it. It goes through crypto. Then it comes back on the other side for the podcasters in dollars, so that in the end, it's transparent and it makes more sense. But again, the value for peace is just one of many, 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 many features. And it's a whole different mindset. So I think it's an education piece.
The beauty about podcasting is that you have people that at some point decide that they want to talk about something, and it's a medium that's easy to get into. There's no gatekeepers. You don't have to ask permission. You can create content. I think that's and own it to the level that you want. And, if I look back to 2004, there was nothing but gatekeepers. If we wanted to be online and get somewhere, you had to ask permission. And that's what made the whole podcasting thing so evolutionary and maybe even revolutionary at the time. It was kind of like outlaw radio almost. It was refreshing. And I think that still exists to an extent. So I don't think the podcasting space is going to slow down anytime soon. Lots of big players out there, but there's still room for the guy that wants to record on his kitchen table. And I think that's the beauty of it.
Thanks for listening. This has been a production of the Sound Off Media Company.